Hello friends and readers, and welcome to my very first video newsletter. This is a new format for me, so I hope you'll bear with me as I try to keep everything to a reasonable length. These first few videos are going to be a bit of a trial and error as I fiddle around to make the most interesting segments for each monthly episode. In essence, these videos will contain what you'd expect to find in my newsletter: information about my newly released books, news about upcoming events, and a bit about my daily life as time permits. If you're already subscribed to my newsletter, you can expect a bit of a transition period in which I cross-post to newsletter subscribers. However, as time goes on, my newsletter will be reduced to only spur-of-the-moment information about sales and release days. If you aren't subscribed to my newsletter, make sure you never miss a sale or new release by visiting my website, harmonywilliams.com, and clicking on the newsletter tab. The newest development in my life has been this. The prolonged injury to my wrists has spurred me to reconsider the way I allocate my resources. Previous to this, I spent a lot of time on social media. I blogged, I took on extra projects, and I never said no to a new opportunity. But it's that inability to say no that's led to this injury. I've gone from being able to write 25,000 words in 24 hours to struggling to meet a daily quota of 2,000 words. I've had to relinquish hobbies that I love and seek out new avenues to devote my time. If nothing else, it's been eye-opening. Currently, I'm able to sustain about 5 hours a week of work. I'm sure that you, my readers, prefer that I use that time to craft more novels instead of interacting with you on social media. To that end, as I re-establish an online presence, I'm going to be making some changes, and one of these will be that my main interaction with you will be video-based. These changes are so that I can continue to write and continue to provide the books that you love. On that note, there are new books coming. My next, the third in the Ladies of Passion trilogy, is called How to Fall for the Wrong Man, and it will release on June 25th. It's funny, it's sexy, and it's exactly the sort of escapist romance that I need right now, so it's coming at a fortuitous time. Yes, I read my own books. What of it? Speaking of books that are coming soon, yes, the third Lady Catherine Regency mystery book is on its way. I promise that I am devoting my 5 hours to finishing it up so Leanne and I can get it to you as soon as possible. We're looking at a late summer release date, but why don't I start you off with a sneak peek to tide you over? Chapter 1, Tuesday, November 5th, 1816. Dalhousie Manor, Mayfair, London. "You could have worn something a touch more appealing," whispered Prudence Berwick, Lady Catherine Irving's dear friend and confidant. Catherine most certainly could not have worn something more appealing. After her stay in the holiday town of Bath a couple months past, the Marquess of Bath's elderly grandmother had for some unfathomable reason fixated upon her as the Marquess's future bride. Catherine would sooner marry her pug than she would marry Lord Bath. Not because he was so very much older than her father and stepmother were of a similar age gap and blissfully happy, but because Catherine Irving did not marry anyone. No, her aspirations resided not in happily wedded bliss, but in following her father's footsteps and becoming a detective of some renown. After the fiasco in Bath, she felt the need to redeem herself acutely. Yes, the burglar of Bath had been uncovered in the end, but she cringed every time she had to admit that she'd had her hand in the cessation of the thefts. Fortunately, the investigative arts were not seen as appropriate for her gender, though neither she nor her father subscribed to such drivel, so the majority of her acquaintances had no notion of her pursuit of criminals. For once, she was glad of that fact. Prue, a woman every bit as tall as Catherine, with a solid frame and a sharp cast to her nose and chin when she frowned, gave Catherine an assessing look as she toyed with a lock of her brown hair. "Pink might bring out your complexion." "I don't need to bring out my complexion. Green makes you look sallow. Honestly, you should burn that dress." All the better, for as long as Grandma Bath was in London with her grandson unwed, Catherine intended to look as unappealing as possible. "Perhaps if I added a few flower-shaped buttons to the bodice," she quipped. Prue grimaced. Her mother had gone wild for the ugliest floral buttons in existence. She was even trying to convince Prue to add some to her wedding dress as decoration. For all that Prue's groom, the Marquess of Annandale, had seen these notorious buttons and opted to propose anyway, Prue bristled every time her mother's fashion tastes were mentioned. Catherine pointedly raised her eyebrow at her friend. Or perhaps we ought to try enjoying the festivities without worrying about how we look. It isn't every day someone holds an ice ball. Tucking her hair behind her ear, Prue narrowed her eyes, sly. Are you not concerned with your appearance because a certain someone is not in attendance? Snapping her eyes from surveying the gathering, Catherine glanced at Prue. Did she know something Catherine didn't? Feigning a smile, she quipped, You mean Lord Annandale? I assure you I haven't set my cap for him. Prue raised her eyebrows. Neither he nor I are concerned that you have. You know of whom I speak. Captain Dorian Wayland. Catherine fought the urge to search the gathering again. She hadn't seen him since their escapade in Bath, and she didn't look forward to seeing him tonight. In fact, it was best if they crossed paths only in the Royal Society for Investigative Techniques. Even then, their contact ought to be minimal. Even if Catherine wanted to extend their association, her father would never approve. The Earl of Dorchester hated Wayland to such an extent that Catherine had once loathed the very sight of him as well. However, after the help he'd provided on the last 2 cases she'd investigated, her father's explanation seemed a bit thin. From what she had observed of Wayland, he had an even stricter moral guideline than when it came to investigating suspects than she. What could he possibly have done to make her father think otherwise? Desperate to change the subject, Catherine said, Yes, where is Lord Bath? Look for the 3rd book in the Lady Catherine Regency Mystery Series this August. I'm running a bit short on time, so I'll end this with a frequently asked question. It's time for Ask Harmony Anything! Today's question is, what inspires you? I'm inspired in a lot of different ways, but today I'm going to talk about one in particular. Something that never fails to inspire me is history itself. I'll learn a neat little tidbit about the past, and my mind will start turning it over and trying to fit it into a concept that's been simmering in the back of my head. An example, I read up on the Frost Fair of 1814. This was one of the extremely rare years during which the River Thames froze over entirely. In fact, it froze so solid that year that vendors set up stalls of hot gingerbread and coffee on the ice, and it turned into a skating festival that included an elephant walking across the ice. It near about killed me that the Lady Catherine books take place 2 years later. So I added an homage to the fair into the 3rd Lady Catherine book. Spoiler alert, Catherine can't skate. If you have a question, ask it in the comments below. Because of my wrists, I can't promise to answer the question in text, but I promise I will answer it in a future video. Thank you for watching, and have a great May.